Thank you. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be sharing the stage with so many other amazing speakers. And great to be at an event called Engage. Most of my work is about engagement. I'm very passionate about it, and here I am at Engage, so it seems appropriate. Sadly, I think we live in a time of disengagement. People are becoming increasingly cynical about politics, about elections, about politicians, about government, and about democracy itself. We've become withdrawn into our busy lives, into our families, our work, our hobbies. And politics has become kind of a spectacle, something that happens over there. We watch with enthusiasm, we laugh, we cry. In Toronto, we cry more than we laugh. It's become a spectator sport, something that we watch passively. Voter turnout has been dropping consistently for decades. The biggest voting bloc in Canada isn't for the Conservatives or the Liberals or the NDP. The biggest singular voting bloc is those who don't vote, which is incredibly sad, especially considering that voting is the smallest thing you can do. Once every 4 years, check, right? That's not a lot to ask. Imagine what the levels of engagement are if you looked at political party membership, volunteering for campaigns, getting involved in nonprofits, getting involved with things in your neighborhood, beyond just the neighbor next door, but really being engaged and participating in all the things around you. Those levels are devastatingly low. People live in suburban areas where you go from your home into your garage, into your car, to the mall. You might have no interaction or sense of community outside of your own family and workplace. And we call this apathy. And I think it's a misdiagnosis. And when you have a misdiagnosis, it's a big problem because you'll end up with the wrong prescription. And if you have the wrong prescription, you won't solve the ailment. In fact, you could make it worse with a misdiagnosis. So I gave a TED Talk a few years ago. I was invited to talk about engagement and participation. And I put forward the idea that apathy, as we think we know it, doesn't exist at all. And that rather than seeing apathy as some kind of internal syndrome, something we have inside of us, that I don't care, I'm selfish, I'm lazy, could we redefine it as some kind of external, complex web of social, cultural, and political barriers that perpetuates disengagement by putting barriers in our way? And the reason I'm so passionate about that, and that I believe that that's true, is because there seems to be two different portraits of who we are. If you sit down with individual people, if I took any of you aside one-on-one and asked you, what do you think about the environment? What do you think about the minimum wage? What do you think about capital punishment? Should we kill people when they do bad things? What do you think about abortion? What do you think about legalizing marijuana? What do you think about right to die legislation, euthanasia? Every one of you would have ideas, passionate opinions based on your own friends and your own experience, your own opinions, and it would come out in this flow of excitement, innovative ideas, and your own unique opinions. Yet you put all these people together as society, and we're apathetic, we're not engaged, we don't care about politics. How do we reconcile these two different portraits of who we are? And that's what my work is about, to try and figure out what's holding us back. And I've been on this kind of journey of exploration to figure out what the barriers are. Because once we redefine apathy as a complex web of barriers, we can identify them, dismantle them, and liberate our own passion and our ability to participate. So, and let me point out that this isn't just about politics in the kind of conventional way we think of politics, you know, government, Queen's Park, City Hall. When we talk about engagement, I'm talking about within our unions, within our nonprofits, within our workplaces, our schools, our hospitals. There's so many ways that we can take an active role, and most of us right now are not, and that's a shame, and I want to talk about why. 144. This was a step on my journey. I did a visual audit of the lobby of City Hall. Some of the obstacles I found, and I have identified hundreds of obstacles that prove my thesis, that there are things keeping us back. And some of them are so obvious, you just kick yourself when you see them. I did a visual audit of the front lobby of Toronto City Hall to try and figure out what resources they provide. If you walk into City Hall, you're curious, I'm a citizen, I want to get involved. How does the budget process work? What are all these meetings? What is the committee structure? What is a community council? What is a standing committee? What is a freedom of information request? Do they have materials in City Hall, the hub, headquarters of democracy? So sure enough, they did. They had 144 leaflets and flyers in the lobby of City Hall, which is great. Guess how many of those leaflets and flyers had anything to do with politics or democracy or City Hall? Guess, out of 144. That's very pessimistic. But you're right. The answer is 0. There is nothing in the lobby of City Hall. They've since changed it because I started doing stuff like this. In the home of democracy, there was nothing. They had 144 of these pamphlets about African lion safari and where to buy diamonds and then eat them, which I know is bad for your health. And they shouldn't be promoting that type of diet at City Hall. Now, it's good to promote tourism. We need that. Economic development, dollars, blah, blah, blah. Great. But how could it be that the people who run the lobby of City Hall thought that people who walk in the door want to know about African lion safari but have no interest in how to be a citizen? And that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then when you walk in, you feel like, oh, I'm just supposed to be a tourist. I'm not supposed to be a citizen. There's no visual cue that this building actually serves a function. And then when they try and actually give us information, so this is when they don't even try. When they do try, arguably it's worse. So this is in my TED Talk. This is allegedly a public notice designed by the government to let you know about something important in your community. There's a proposal for a new condo, right? And you live in the neighborhood. Maybe your opinion matters. Maybe you want to have a say. So they put these ridiculous ads in the paper, and they are the worst designed materials in the history of our species. They don't catch your eye. They don't put the most important information at the top. The most important information is, where is this condo proposed? Is it in Scarborough? Is it in North York? Like, why do I care? So halfway down, in tiny, tiny, tiny font, they put the address. But why would anyone have gotten that far? Why would you read half of a boring ad if you don't even know if it's about your neighborhood? And then at the bottom, again, tiny, tiny font, what you can do as a citizen to have your voice heard. And when I was doing this TED Talk, I asked the audience hypothetically to imagine how stupid it would look if the private sector advertised in the same way. You've all seen billboards and ads in magazines. They're flashy, they're sexy, they're funny. Imagine if Nike had a new pair of shoes to sell, and they hired whoever designed this ad to design their ad. We would see billboards and ads in magazines that looked like this. And it's funny, you're laughing, but it should actually make you cry, because what does that tell us about the motivations of City Hall? Nike has good ads. Why? Because they want you to buy their shoes, right? So they put effort into, like, how do we catch their attention? How do we get them excited about our product? And when we see ads like this, the message clearly is they don't want us involved. That's intentional exclusion, not apathy. If no one shows up to that meeting, it's not apathy. It's a complete lack of effort on the part of government to reach out and engage us. And of course, this is just the print notices. Then you've got these signs that go up outside the properties where they want to develop. And again, designed very poorly. A lot of jargon. Todd talked about jargon. It's a terrible thing to use. It turns people off. I've circled a whole bunch of examples here. Exterior amenity space. No one talks that way. No one says, hey, Jim, you want to meet at 3 o'clock in the exterior amenity space? If we don't use that language, then they shouldn't use it. And in your nonprofits, in your unions, in your companies, you can't use it. When you're doing outreach, you got to get outside of your bubble and use language that people actually understand. Vehicular parking. Is there another kind of parking? What else would you park? Even a bicycle is a vehicle. I mean, a mechanical penthouse. I'm thinking like a porn magazine with parts coming out of it. I don't understand. And then you got this thing, the statutory public meeting, which always says information will be posted once it's scheduled, and it's never posted. And of course, one tip to the city, you want to get more people out to a statutory public meeting? Don't call it a statutory public meeting. It sounds like you don't want to have it, like you're being forced to have it. And then the bottom, that file number 12152660. What? Every automobile in the province of Ontario is uniquely identified with 7 alphanumeric digits. Millions of cars. And the Toronto Planning Department needs 14 digits And I'm supposed to phone them up now and say, hi, I have a question about 1215266, blah, blah, blah. These are all barriers that guarantee that no one will ever engage in anything. Then you got language like this. So the condo is going to have a 4-story podium. Now, anyone who does urban planning or is an architect knows that a podium is the bottom 2 or 3 floors of a building that are wider, and the condo tower goes on top. How many of you knew that? Of course. Why would you? There's no need to. So when you think of a 4-story podium, you're thinking of something like this, and people are going to think, why the hell would I want a 4-story podium? It's going to just fill residents with rage. You're going to phone up the counselor. It doesn't meet the aesthetic of my street. And the noise, it's going to be so loud. And the drain on the grid. 4 levels of below-grade parking. It just sounds like crappy parking, right? I want high-grade parking in my neighborhood. So below grade means things that are under the ground. What's the term we use for things that are under the ground? Underground. Everyone knew it. Why don't they know it? Underground. So we should use the same language that we would use at a party or with our friends or with our family. Imagine if the subway in London was called the below grade. It's a terrible name for a subway, right? Or imagine a band called the Velvet Below Grade. It's not a good name for a band. This is my report card from 1991, similar to Kelsey's perhaps. And this is below grade, folks. At least according to my mother's expectations. I was aiming for 50s, a little bit higher than Kelsey. I don't know what the 49, that didn't make sense to me. Unless you already had a 51 and the 49 on averages, but you want to get the credit. So I was aiming for 50s, and I nailed it. This is amazing. But by my mother's expectations, this was below grade. So those are examples of how the city's doing a terrible job of trying to communicate. And I didn't want to just complain about it. Clearly, I like complaining. But I wanted to show how it could be better. So I did a call out on my blog asking designers to show what a public notice could look like if it was designed to get people's attention, highlight the most basic information they need to know, let them know how to participate, different points of entry to participate as a citizen, and then the proactive call to action. We want to hear from you. Your voice matters. This is your chance. And people send me the most amazing designs. And once you see this, you're like, of course. What were they thinking? Like, how could, it's a crime that they don't do it like this. We're listening Toronto. We're listening to you. Clear icons about phoning, emailing, a public meeting. There's a picture of what's been proposed. They're using things like bold and underline, which are very affordable tools that help highlight pieces of information that the city seems to think they can't afford. Exclamation marks, also very affordable these days. The prices have come down drastically in decades. Have your say. We need your input. Big changes coming soon. Before and after picture. I mean, this is obvious stuff that once you think about it for a moment, makes sense. This was the most exciting one. This came from the village of Pemberton. And this blew my mind. And I'm an optimist. I believe in change. And I didn't think that my work would actually lead to change. The village of Pemberton saw my TED Talk, saw those designs I just showed you, and actually changed their public notice for real. And I was like, what? This is amazing. So the National Post did a story about it, about how one BC municipality is getting people to actually read their notices. And I thought, I'm going to make them an award. So I printed out this award. I designed it nicely. And this is a good tip. If you print out an award in color and frame it and give it to someone, even if it's just from you, they'll be over the moon. So this is the mayor of Pemberton. And now I've got cities across Canada fighting over themselves, tripping over each other to win the next Dazzling Notice Award. It's become a national program. And thank you. Vancouver has just done theirs. This is Vancouver's just a month ago. That's their old one on top. That's their new one. This is the notice that goes on the property. And this is North Vancouver. That's their old printed ad in the paper, and the new one on the right. And Ottawa just released their new one, which shows what you can do with a color printer and a frame from Blacks. So those were some examples of how government does a bad job. But let's also look at how we introduce our youth to politics, because I think we actually teach apathy in schools. And here's a great example of how poorly we do this. What do you all think of when I say the principal's office? Right. Everyone said the same thing. I'm just going to go grab my water over here. Thank you, Jim. Isn't that terrible? This is the first time that children are developing a relationship with authority. And what is the job of the principal? It's multifaceted. Yes, they do discipline, of course, but they're also the people who run the school, which means part of their job is to listen to all the stakeholders, including the teachers and the students. Wouldn't it be fun to introduce the kids to the principal on the first day in that context? This is Principal Smith. She runs the school. Part of her job is to listen to you. If any of you have any ideas of how to make your educational experience in the school better, her job is to listen to you, so let us know. Wouldn't that be amazing? Could we reach a point where a kid could go home and say with pride, guess what, Mom? I was in the principal's office. Why is that crazy? Why is that even funny? And the mother knows instinctively that means that that kid was identified as someone by a teacher who had such a good idea that it was worth talking to the principal. And maybe it's not practical to actually implement the idea, but it was good enough to have a discussion. That's authority. It's not something to avoid. It's not a bad thing to interact with the person in charge. It's a good thing, right? From the youngest age, we teach people not to have confidence in their own ideas and that your role in a structure is to be obedient and avoid those who have management positions above you, which explains a lot about how we act when we grow up. Quick story here about a project I did a few years ago called guerrilla gardening. We take abandoned pieces of public space like this soil here, and we sneak out without a permit, without permission, and we plant things. It's really fun. The plants usually die a few weeks later because we don't have a guerrilla watering program. but the symbolism is really powerful. The symbolism is powerful for two reasons. Number one, it shows people that you can change things. I think one of the biggest barriers to engagement is that we assume that things can't change, that things are static, and that we have no role to play in change. And just going out and planting a flower in your neighborhood reminds you physically and visually that I can alter the world around me. I can have an impact. I can leave the world different than how I found it. And I have a whole lifetime to do that. And sometimes it's the smallest changes that remind us about that and rewire our minds. But the other important thing about guerrilla gardening is that it's not in your home. You're changing something outside of your own realm of private ownership. And the reason this is important is because we all take care of things that we know are ours. We take care of our cars, our homes, our clothes, our hair, our bodies, whatever, because it's ours. And one way that we can get people more engaged is to have a sense of collective ownership over the commons, over our schools, hospitals, public spaces. And when that spoon goes through the top layer of soil, it might be the first time in your life that you've actively participated in altering something outside of your own home or workplace, and that is transformative. What is this? IKEA. You're great. Straight A's for everyone. This is IKEA, and we get this because when we get IKEA furniture, it's in pieces, and a lot of pieces, and confusing amount of pieces. And there's bolts this size, and this size, and this size, and 20 of these, and a peg, and a screw, and a nut. And it's hard enough to put together with this map. Imagine trying to put it together without the map. I think that's how a lot of people see politics. We don't teach civics well in school. People are confused. I have a question about transit. Is that municipal? Is that provincial? Is it federal? Is it TTC, which is different than council? I'm just going to avoid this because I might embarrass myself if I get involved. People need to have that roadmap to have the confidence to walk through those corridors at City Hall and know that they're doing the right thing. So how do we build a culture of engagement? But first, let me step back and ask why. Why do we care? Maybe we're fine. Let the mayor, well, not our mayor, but let leaders run things, right? Why do we all need to be engaged? It's important because I think people have something really important to contribute. And for two reasons. We often think about engagement being important because of obligation and duty. We tell people you should vote out of duty and participate out of duty. And we tell decision makers that you should engage because you have a moral obligation to consult with the masses. Let's throw that in the garbage. The reason we should have higher levels of engagement is because as a voter or a union member or a student or whatever, it's in your self-interest to participate. And if you don't try and shape the world around you, someone else will do it in a shape that you might not like. And from the perspective of the decision maker, it's a huge resource. You've got all these people with ideas and innovation and creativity. The best ideas might not come from the boardroom table or the gurus or the high-paid consultants. It might come from people just like you and me, from the students, from your own employees, from your union members. The greatest resource we have available as a society is each other. And the greatest resource any organization has is its membership. So how do we build this culture? We need 4 things. Confidence, the thing that we don't teach in schools, that your voice matters, that everyone has something unique to contribute. A sense of collective ownership, that beyond your own home, you're a stakeholder. The world is a co-op, and you're a member. Number 3, the tools, the roadmap. How does government work? How does your organization work? Do people know the mechanisms they need to be involved? And 4th, faith that things can change and that you can play an active role in that change. If we can instill those 4 things in people's minds and liberate the passion that they have, ignite their fire, I think we'll all find that we'll live in a world that is more sane, more sustainable, more green, more just, more happy, more friendly, and maybe even more fun. Thank you.